It's Nub TV. It's Nub TV.
Okay, welcome Bernard to Nub TV. It's great
Thank
to have
you.
you on, and really excited to be chatting about your new book. If you can just give our viewers just a little précis of what you do and about your new book, which is out now, I believe.
Well, what I do currently is a lot of podcasts about my book, as well as continue to see patients. I'm a psychiatrist,
Sure.
so I love to do psychotherapy. So I have some patients to do psychotherapy, and I'm trying to figure out more about how meaningful coincidences work, particularly caught up right today in the relationship between fractals and meaningful coincidences, which you can ask me about, but I can't tell you. There's some relationship about repeated patterns.
Yeah.
Fractals are repeated patterns of self-similar, but not the same usually. And that's what I'm thinking about now. I keep trying to push back the envelope or the curtain really about how to explain meaningful coincidences. And it's very important to recognize that one explanation is fun to have, but there really isn't one. There are multiple explanations for meaningful coincidences that I try to get into in my book.
Okay, so what is the most common type of meaningful coincidence?
That's a question I wondered about, and thank you for asking. I did a survey called the Weird Coincidence Survey to try to answer that question and other questions related to meaningful coincidences. The reason to do the survey was, I hear a lot of stories, but let's have some numbers here. I was chairman of a psychiatry department, and I did a lot of like regular research. So I have this research bent, but I also have this weird bent out here where if you get to the end of the book, psychosphere is something I talk about, which is a potential explanation for telepathy, clairvoyance, and things like that, and more. So I've bridged a wide range, but not all the way in either direction, trying to figure it out. So this weird coincidence survey was like the beginning of the formal research. I'd had a lot of experiences in my life. Okay. So I wanted to say, well, do other people have these things too? I've heard about it, but do they? And we did it at University of Missouri, Columbia, and 1,000 people 2 different times. And we got this might not mean much to a lot of our viewers, but a valid and reliable scale, which means it was stamped of approval by statisticians and psychologists. So it was the first one of those. And it's on my, the scale can be taken. It's on my website, which is coincider.com, COINCIDER. Coincider is one way to look at it. And you can take the scale and see how sensitive to coincidences you are. But what we did was also come up with the most common ones, which is what you're asking about. And the most common ones are about 4 of them. And one of them, I'll just tell you about, happened yesterday. It's like that you think of something that you need or want, some information that you want, something you need to know about, and it's answered by media or other people without your asking. So I was walking back from the river.
Myself,
Does that happen to you?
Yeah, it does quite a lot, yeah.
Hey, okay, we're playing baseball then.
If I'm in a certain frame of mind, it happens more. If I'm in quite a negative, down kind of depression type state, then I don't get these things. So do you find that?
Yes. Yes, indeed, Mark. Yes, to repeat it, when your mind is slowed down, you're not running a lot of thoughts, and it's thoughts matching the environment that make coincidences. So you don't have a lot of possibilities in your mind. It's very simple. And I have a manic person who's mania with manic depressive illness. He'll tell you more extremes than that. So that's one. But then you mentioned you got to be in a current right state of mind. Can you describe the right state of mind that you might need to be in?
Just where I feel kind of at ease with myself, happy maybe, but joyful, open to things happening, I think. Because when I've had them, I have more because I feel like I'm open to these experiences.
Well, the open,
I'm noticing that,
open, open is a word needs to be described. We do doors and windows, but when you have a person being open,
yeah.
what's that?
Well, I mean, just being, I'm when they happen, I kind of acknowledge it, and I think that's the thing. When I acknowledge it, more happen. Whereas a lot of people might just dismiss it, like, oh,
Well, that's key, that you're willing to acknowledge it, which means you're willing to notice it.
yeah,
And probably the simplest way to talk about what causes coincidences is being willing to see them.
yeah, okay, okay, yeah. I mean, that's in my experience. That's how I feel about it. But I just wondered where do these come from? What triggers
Well,
them?
where do they come from? Where do they come from?
Yeah.
Well, we just started with where they come from in a very important way, which is they come from your willingness, our viewers' willingness to acknowledge that they exist and might be worth paying attention to.
Mhm.
That
Okay.
that's one way of saying without that you're not going to have many coincidences. There are plenty of them that happen, like universal constants and even chlorophyll, which is weird enough anyway. How'd that happen?
Right.
That seemed to make it so we can live on this planet. And there's a lot of debate about how that happened, and that's
Okay.
another thing. But we are we living in a simulation is becoming more and more of a question as more virtual reality experiences get out there in the people's world, and wonder, is there some, are we somehow algorithmic involved, or algorithmically involved in somebody else's computer game and in a simulation? So that's a kind of an interesting one. The most common explanations are God or universe and random, and consciousness gets in there
Mhm.
as a potential. But one of the problems I really like to emphasize with your question about where they come from is is that the individual person has something to do with them too.
So, okay, so this is kind of, in my experience, is there a link between quantum physics and where that's going in terms of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
consciousness kind of creating the reality that we see?
The quantum physics, and particularly non-locality, which is
Yeah.
really like a favorite thing out there, is to me a placeholder for what we don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
and a lot of people think you say quantum physics or quantum field and you got an answer, and it's not that much better than God or universe or consciousness, but it is a little better.
Yeah. Because what we're seeing now, especially on our show, is that people are explaining the paranormal with quantum physics, as using, like you're saying, that as an explanation, but still doesn't really explain it. It
It
gives it
still doesn't really explain it. And since we're doing paranormal, and I hope a little music, and I'd like to be able to
yeah.
suggest to you that one of the places that I experienced lots of paranormal kind of experiences, including interpersonal energy,
Okay.
is dance. I go
Okay.
to I go
Wow.
to a like ecstatic dance or five rhythms dance,
Okay.
and just, man, what happens on that dance floor is a microcosm of what could happen outside, but in a slower way. Uh,
Okay.
there's a telepathic and interpersonal energy things going on, and other things going on pretty regularly, but you got to be able to pay attention to them. So
And what sort of dance is this? Sorry.
it's called five rhythms,
Okay.
or ecstatic dance,
Static
or
dance.
do whatever you feel like is the better way of describing it.
And what sort of music are you dancing to?
Whatever the playlist person brings in,
Okay.
which is usually non-lyrical. Sometimes there are words to it,
Right.
and it often starts slowly, so you can kind of get
Okay.
going with it a little bit and get moving. And then in the middle, it you get some drummy things going, and
Okay.
then towards the end, it gets kind of like slow and like then I get to twirl around and move around and
Oh,
dance
this
with
sounds
different.
amazing. We need to do this on Knob TV. We have to do it. So thank you for that. I've never heard of it before. So that opens a lot more possibilities.
It's
So
international.
is it? Okay, I need to check it out. So is this like kind of like getting into a shamanic trance sort of thing, would you say? Okay.
Sort of thing. Yeah. I mean, and the way I say it, being as I'm kind of primitive, is I get, I become the music and the music becomes me.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Okay.
And,
Okay.
and getting into that space is something like a shamanic space, I'm guessing. Um, and
Okay.
things happen with
You're
that.
saying so you get telepathic things going on as well then?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that sounds really, really cool. Because I think music is important. I have a lot of synchronicities regarding music. I mean, I am a musician, but I'll be thinking about a certain song or certain band, then I'll hear them on the radio. I notice there could be like just probability that you're going to hear them
Well,
some.
well, well, just pause for that because that's important. It is probability. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm trying to say is that probability is part of the description of a coincidence, but
Okay.
it's not the only explanation.
Right. Yeah.
That's what needs to be. And mystery, which I prefer, is like, I don't know. I'm in this business about coincidences because when I went to Yale, I went to Stanford. These are famous schools supposed to
Yeah.
teach you a lot. They didn't teach me something. I knew it. They
Right.
didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There was something missing. And so I've been out here with the coincidence thing after I finished being chairman. Well, even while I was ending it, trying to use coincidence to figure out what's going on around here. And they are clues to our participation in reality. And one of the fundamental things is our minds are not so isolated from our environments as we are told.
Mm.
And coincidences between like you thinking of a song and it shows up on the radio, that's one of the second most common coincidences, thinking of something and you hear it on the radio.
I can imagine.
That that shows how your mind is more connected to what's around you, with probability being involved, with
Mm.
mystery being involved, but your mind has something to do with making it happen.
Okay. I mean, do you think we were I say open again, more open to this, in our kind of what's the word, primeval state as opposed to our civilized state? Is there any suggestion for that, or is it?
I, primeval is where we're going. Uh,
Yeah.
what we've done as humanity, and we better do it, or we're dead, is like try to bring together our scientific thinking with the
Mhm.
Aboriginal thinking of Australia, for example, or Maori,
Mhm.
to recognize that we are also a primitive culture in ourselves, and they can tell us about who we are along with our science. And I represent one of the many people who are trying to put together enlightenment restrictedness to like just the observable to with consciousness expansion of and of indigenous cultures so that we can develop an integration of them because we need to be able to do that in order to save humanity from destroying itself.
Wow, that's quite profound. Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. I mean, I've read your biography. It says you're the first psychiatrist to really study synchronicities, meaningful coincidence, since Carl Jung. And I read his book, Synchronicity, and it was very interesting. But it kind of lost me halfway through, uh, in terms of getting into science.
It takes perseverance and several readings to
Yeah.
understand what Jung was talking about.
Mm.
He was a little nervous about publishing that because he was afraid of the ridicule he was going to get
Absolutely. Yeah, I
for
see
doing that. So it's obscure, and that what my book is, Meaningful Coincidences, on there on my door there, is the next step past what Jung might have done in trying to describe meaningful coincidences. So I'm not a follower of Jung.
Mhm.
I'm following Jung. I'm
Yeah, I got
doing
you.
it after Jung,
Okay.
and because I have some newer ideas than he does.
Sure.
Back then, quantum mechanics, quantum physics was like a placeholder. But
Yeah.
since this is a parapsychology thing that we're doing here, I wanted to get the music thing in
Yeah.
because
Okay. Yeah.
music, and we talked about it, but music is, and dance. I mean, if you're into synesthesia, converting one sense into another, dance is synesthesia. You convert the sound into body movements, and it's so nice to get tuned in and then almost kind of watch my body do stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
And I got to keep my eyes closed most of the time, because otherwise the vision, like science, gets
Yeah.
in the way of the experience.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you don't feel it. You visualize it. I got you. Wow, that's amazing.
And science is mostly about the visual thing, but other things do. Not so much about the other
I mean,
ones.
does your
So,
concept of time also go when you're in that dance state? Does time change for you?
well, I'm afraid you're going to have to hear "Time is on my side." Yes, it is now. I mean, I think that was a band from England that you may have heard of that did that song. It's still popping around in some form or another.
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of people like to talk about time and how it's stretchy. Um, and the past is present and the present is past. And I mean, and the future is now. And
Yeah.
I think there's something to that, but I'm still trying to be able to have you as a regular person trying to understand telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, to understand it in a way that you can conceptualize, not saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, Mark,
Mm.
it's quantum physics. It's non-locality," and you're saying, "Well,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Non-locality means it's faster than the speed of light. The way the two things interact, whatever they are, but the speed of light is pretty fast." And so I like try to think about the meaningful coincidence thing and the telepathic parts of them in a following way. I'd like to be able to tell you that, if that's all right.
Please do.
Well, it starts with a metaphor. You know, indigenous cultures tell a lot of stories, and Western anthropologists say these are just stories, but they're the way in which the culture transmit information. It's knowledge in those.
Mhm.
And here's what I think is a modern day transformative informational event,
Yeah.
or a series of events that has been well documented. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it referred to in my book, this meaningful coincidence thing. And it's in the section about really 6 hard to understand coincidences.
Mhm.
And it's the story of the 2 Lauras
Mhm.
that happen. Do you know that story?
No, no, I'm listening.
Well, it's a it's it took place in jolly old England,
Okay.
and that's why it's fun to be able to tell you that. There it involves a girl named, starts with a girl named Laura Buxton, um, who was who in June 2001 was 10 years old in Staffordshire, England.
Mhm.
And she was attending her grandparents' golden wedding anniversary.
Mhm.
And she was in need of a friend and of a friend. She didn't have a friend, she wanted one. Her grandfather thought she could find one for herself by writing her address on a label with the message that said, "Please return to Laura Buxton."
Okay.
And they had some helium balloons as part of the celebration. So attach that tag to the helium helium balloon
Yeah.
and set it off.
Yeah.
Now, one of the drivers of this was a need that Laura had for a friend, but also the love her grandfather had for Laura, that wanted her to have somebody to be able to be connected with. So off goes this balloon. Then a farmer in Milton, Libourne, Wiltshire,
Yeah.
about I love telling these names to you. I don't know where they are, but you know them.
Yeah, I do.
About, about 140 miles away, pulled the balloon out of the hedge that separated his pastures from the neighbor's pasture. He noticed the name Laura Buxton, and since this was the name of his neighbor's daughter, yeah,
Wow.
he
Yeah, yeah.
brought the balloon to her. The Laura Buxton from Milton Libourne was also 10 years old, then wrote back to the Laura of Staffordshire, and the parents got them together because the coincidence was so
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. That's
And
amazing.
when they met, they were both wearing similar clothes,
Whoa.
discovered that they had 3 similar pets, including a 3-year-old black Labrador.
Wow.
And you can see, like 10 years later, the girls had become friends. I think they went to the same college together. So it actually did happen.
Wow.
So how do I explain that? And why is that related to how telepathy and more might work? That's what I'm about to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So the grandfather let I'm going to make a rectangle like this.
Yeah,
Very simple thing. So the grandfather let the balloon go up into the sky. The balloon traveled 140 miles, came down where the other Laura was,
Yeah.
and the other Laura then contacted the first Laura.
Sure.
Okay.
Square.
So instead of just rectangles, think of balloons that each of the Lauras had connected to them in the psychosphere. Now, the psychosphere, I'm saying, is our mental atmosphere. Rather than talking about quantum fields, and there may be something to quantum fields,
Yeah.
and rather than talking about other kinds of fields that may be there, this is a kind of more primitive field, but it's still a field of energy and information. It's in that field or in that place. When people look up, maybe it is up. That these balloons on top of that I'm connecting with each Laura to, these balloons, I'm saying, are our higher selves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these higher selves are floating around in the psychosphere. I mean, it's not really a rigid rectangle, it's just an approximation. And they're floating around in the ebbs and tides and movements and all the stuff that's going on in there, because a lot of stuff going on. But the thought goes up from grandfather and Laura to her, the first Laura's higher self, and somehow that connects up to another higher self with which the first higher self is resonating. They're resonating together. It's resonance, as you know from music and harmony and harmonics, is what makes things feel good, what makes music sound good. So I think we can resonate in some form yet to be determined. I have some ideas about that.
Sure.
To create a connection through which information is passed, energy and information pass, and that higher one, that hitting the second Laura came down to her through the friend of the neighbor next door, and then Laura, the second Laura, contacted the first Laura. And I think that's the way we make connections happen with people, through telepathy. Was a friend of mine said, I really miss my boyfriend. I really miss my boyfriend. We haven't been together for months and maybe a year. And she said she sent out smoke signals to him. And these smoke signals, I think, followed this pathway I just described. And he, after she did a bunch of those, contacted her, and they're living together again.
Oh, wow. Okay. Fascinating. I like that vibration resonance. That's a really good explanation. I just want to share, kind of running out of time now, just want to share one of my other meaningful coincidences, a bit similar to what you just told us, is that I run a record label and do this TV show. Okay. I started the record label back in 2004. Then around about 2009, 10, I started getting other bands on board to release their music. And I found this really good band called The Boy from Space and signed them because I really liked them and they had a good energy about them. So they came on the label, really got on well with them. And then I needed some more help with the label because we were getting, getting more acts on, getting more business. I needed someone else to come on board. So then this person called Guy from the band that volunteered to help with the label. Now Guy is my co-presenter on the show as well. And so we were working together for quite a long time. And then we were at a party somewhere, a networking thing in London, and we found out we both had the same birthday. And then we found out we were both actually born on the same day. We were actually the same actual birthday. And we both got 3 kids. We both had jobs for the civil service at the time. And our lives were like weird in tandem, parallel to each other. And we ended up getting together, and now we're doing this TV show together. It's just, yeah, amazing, I think.
Yeah, I like the same day birthdays. It's easy to get the same date birthdays, easier.
Yeah.
But the same day, was he the same day? Was he born in England too?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's yeah.
I had one of those with the Italian translator of my first book. Had the same birthday as you did.
Yeah.
With the guy who with whom I composed some songs based on my first book. So we have a CD of coincidence songs that that we want to and so he's had that kind of connection. They were both like deeply into my book, one from the music, one from the translation perspective. Well, that's what you have is even better because the two of you have become like twins.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Where that all those similarities make it feel like it's meant to be for the two of you to be together.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is, and it's it's paying dividends now. We're doing this show together and discussing these subjects as well, which is brilliant.
That's wonderful.
At the end of the day, he was just some person called Guy who was on my label and liked what he was doing, and yeah, we were drawn together somehow. But yeah.
And he liked what you were doing. I mean, that's the same thing I'm talking about, the resonance thing. Liking is familiar resonance, and one way to think about it. So there was something he saw, felt, experienced more like that was very, very compatible with his energy field and his, I think, basic pattern of resonance himself.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. How can people find out more about you and buy your book, more importantly?
Well, thank you. You can buy Meaningful Coincidences, How and Why Serendipity and Synchronicity Happen at any book place. I encourage you to buy it at your local bookstore. Encourage local bookstores. And you can take the Weird Coincidence Survey on coincider.com. A coincider is who's inside with me or inside with the rest of us. But coincider is a person who experiences coincidences, or a lot of them, and you do. So you're a coincider. Join the group. There's more people out there. So coincider.com, you get to my website, and you'll be able to buy the book from there or any place you want to. I also have a Psychology Today blog and podcast myself.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Bernard. Been great having you on.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. That was excellent. I really enjoyed that. So thank you.
You're welcome. I like your I like your birthday guy. I mean, I like hearing ones I don't hear too often, and this is the second time I've heard that story.
It's